Hello, everybody. The AdWords world is abuzz with the forced transition into responsive search ads, or RSAs. So, what are responsive search ads, and are they worth transitioning to? Should you use the traditional text ad format? What's all this hubbub about RSAs, and what does it mean for you if you're running ads on Google? Let's investigate. All right, so let's dig into responsive search ads in case you don't know the basics and, what are we talking about? So basically the concept is that Google artificial intelligence is going to take a bunch of headlines and a bunch of descriptions that you've written and mix and match those on the fly as users search the internet. So what could possibly go wrong, right? Let's go through the steps. So what are they exactly and where do you see them? Now, of course, if you just look at the Google search screen, and you search for, cat insurance or something, you as the user don't necessarily know whether an ad is a text ad, a traditional text ad, or it's an RSA. You don't know that. They're on the back end where they're created. So let's pop over here. And so I have some example ads. And if you're running them, you'll see here on the ad type column that it tells you whether this is an expanded text ad, which is the traditional, or a responsive search ad, which is the new format. Now, if it's an RSA, click under Asset Details, and you're going to see like your various assets that are running. And it's giving you some data about which assets, which headlines, and which descriptions are running. Now, if you go over here and you go to Edit, over here with the pencil, then you're going to see like the input. So like a traditional ad, these are ads supporting my books on Amazon. So you can see that the final URL is there, the display URL, and then you have these multiple headlines that you create, and it tries to give you suggestions. It has some interesting ideas where you can click on View Ideas and it'll give you some what it thinks are suggestions. So you write multiple headlines and multiple descriptions, and you can have, I think, about 7, 8, 10 headlines and about 5 descriptions. Now, a couple ideas. You want to make sure that your headlines include your target keywords. That's always a best practice. And then you want to have some pizzazz in them. I often ask questions or talk about something being top rated, or maybe emphasize that I have a free consultation, etc. So that's the traditional format. Okay, now, if you're in the old format, let's go back to the old format here. So if you're in the old format, again, you can click on the pencil, Edit, and then you'll see the old format has 3 headlines and 2 lines of descriptions. Even here, you don't always see the headlines. They mix and match here as well. So that's kind of what's there. Oh, I want to show you one other thing. On a responsive search ad, when you're in it, you can click on that little pin, and that will pin it in position 1. Now, typical Google, this is poorly written. It says show this headline only in position 1. What they really actually seem to mean is always show this headline and always show it in position 1. So typical Google fashion, it's poorly written and misleading in what it actually mean. So that seems to be what they actually want to mean, is if you pin it, it's always going to show, and it's always going to show in position 1. You've got to experiment with that because they failed English at Google. They're not really good English students. So you want to make sure, because the text doesn't really seem to say what it actually seems to mean. Okay, now here's the next. Okay, so now let's just sort of talk a little bit about some of the challenges here. So first, I would talk a little bit about Google versus us, and I really emphasize this in my book on AdWords. And I think the blogosphere is too trusting of Google, to be diplomatic. Google gets paid by the click, and you get paid by the conversion, and these are not the same things. So the Google AI is going to be set to maximize clicks and to be cynical to increase your cost per click, not necessarily to give you the best return on investment. So I am always deeply skeptical of Google artificial intelligence because there's a conflict of interest between you and Google. So just always be aware of that. And I think a lot of people in the blogosphere are just too trusting of Google. Now, I've covered this point. I want you to include your keywords in your headlines and descriptions. That's just a best practice. I would always write with pizzazz. You've got to stand out. It's cluttered. You've got to do all the best practices of how to write good ads. So not just keywords, but something about your unique selling proposition, something that's great about your company. As you write these, remember they can be intermixed. So it's not clear which headline is going to go with which description and vice versa. So they need to be written in such a way that they're interchangeable. And then here's the advice that Google would not give you is you want to write attract, repel copy. And this is a dramatic difference in how I approach AdWords and how really most people approach AdWords. It's okay to try to repel people who are not your customers. So you often might say something like quality or premium or concierge for something that is high cost to repel people who don't have the money or the inclination for a premium service, for instance. So you want to write attract, repel copy as well. So you've really got to use your skills as a good writer to thread these needles. All right, next let's talk a little bit about trust but verify. So I am not saying that these are terrible, but I am saying you should be skeptical about their performance. And fortunately, Google still lets us run the legacy expanded text ads. So if you already have them, that's great. If not, you can still create them, and I want to show you how to do that. So in your account, you can click on the plus sign. You're going to see probably only the option of responsive search ad. And then up here at the top, you'll see this, switch back to text ads. So you can click switch back to text ads. Yes, switch. Of course, they're going to warn you. And then now you're in the text ad interface. So that's one way to create text ads if you don't have them. Another way to do it is to copy the ad and then paste the ad. That's an old expanded text ad. So they're still allowing us to create expanded text ads if you don't have them in your interface, if you don't see them easily. So I would always run, a responsive search ad and some expanded text ads and compare the performance. Okay, now just look here at my account, and this is data for this month. And I just want to show you that the responsive search ad, which is the one that Google thinks is, the cat's meow, has a 10.57% click-through rate. And the expanded text ad has a 15.34% click-through rate. So the click-through rate is better on the old format than on the new format. The other thing you'll often see here, and see this as well, the cost per click on the old format is dramatically lower than the cost per click on the new format. Now, I'm not saying that that is always going to be the case, but you do need to trust and verify that this is the case for you, because the Google propaganda is going to tell you that these are just awesome, right? So those who are fans of the Terminator movies, just remember Genesis is Skynet, right? So you don't just blindly trust all the hype around Google AI, Google Artificial Intelligence. Finally, I have a few links to resources on responsive search ads. And, again, read these, but remember what's important is how do these work for you and your clients and not how they work for Google or in general. And just be deeply skeptical of what you read on the blogosphere. So, summing up, responsive search ads are the new thing. We're all being forced into them by Google. You can kind of see the writing on the wall. They're probably going to take away expanded text ads at some future point. You still need to be skeptical about how to write them. You need to follow the best practices that I have in my book on AdWords. Secondly, not surprising to anyone who has a brain, right? Don't just believe everything that large corporations tell you. Trust, verify, experiment, measure, and figure out what works for you. So there you go with responsive search ads. Thank you for watching.